Slow, sweeping shots of a war-torn battlefield. The sound of lost gunfire and explosions. A space marine stands defiantly against a horde of enemies. You know the image. The heroism. The sacrifice. The unyielding fury of mankind's last stand. It is a lie. A comforting one, but a lie nonetheless. Let's transition the scene from the battlefield to the interior of a colossal, Gothic scriptorium. A seemingly infinite hall of scribes, each at a small desk. We dive down, moving past millions of bent backs and scratching quills. The truth of the Imperium of Man is not written in bolter shells or the blood of martyrs. It is inscribed here. On paper. Mountains of it. A continent of parchment, processed by an empire of scribes so vast, so unimaginably complex, that its true size is known only to God. And He is not talking. This machine consumes lives not in moments of explosive violence, but in decades of silent, soul-crushing drudgery. A clerk can live, serve, and die having never seen the sky, his entire existence dedicated to the correction of a single line in a single ledger, for a war fought 1,000 years before he was born. A single, pale scribe, his hands trembling as he dips a quill into ink. A single drop falls, blotting a word. He looks up in sheer terror. A servo skull buzzes ominously nearby. We cut to a massive vaulted chamber where a single piece of parchment, stamped with a vital request for reinforcements, is physically carried by a running messenger priest. A request for aid from a besieged world can take centuries to traverse the labyrinth of approvals, misfilings, and doctrinal disputes. By the time the guard is dispatched, that world may be ash, its people long since consumed, the war forgotten by all, except the bureaucracy that recorded it. This is not the story of a hero with a chainsword. This is not the tale of a psyker bending reality to their will. This is the story of the true power in the Imperium, the engine of empire, the cage that holds back the galaxy's darkness through sheer unimaginable weight. This is the story of the Adeptus Administratum, and it is the most terrifying thing you will ever comprehend. To understand this behemoth, we cannot rely on speculation. We must delve into the archives themselves. For this journey, we are drawing from the deepest wells of imperial knowledge. The core codices that outline the Adeptus Terra, the intricate testimonies found in the Vaults of Terra series, which show us the view from the very heart of the palace, and the Watchers of the Throne series, which reveals the political machinations at the highest level. We will cross-reference these with the gritty, ground-level reality from novels like The Hollow Mountain and the many other Black Library texts that have dared to send their protagonists into this paper-shaped hell. This is not a guess. It is a reconstruction from the surviving fragments of a broken system. So, what is the promise of this investigation? By the end of this hour, you will not just know of the Administratum, you will understand it, you will see the brutal, terrifying logic behind its infamous inefficiency. You will learn why this glacial pace is not a failure, but a deliberate, necessary feature for an empire terrified of its own shadow. You will comprehend how a single misplaced form can unleash an exterminatus, and how a lowly scribe hunched over his desk for a lifetime holds more power than a planetary governor. We will expose how this colossal bureaucracy is the greatest strength of the Imperium, the only thing that allows it to function at all, while simultaneously being the rusted, fragile foundation that guarantees its slow, inevitable collapse. This is the story of how paperwork in the 41st millennium is a matter of life and death on a galactic scale. Now visualize a schematic diagram of the Imperial Palace, looking less like a building and more like a colossal, intricate machine or a brain's neural network. To navigate this labyrinth, we require a map. Here is our path, our journey into the heart of imperial bureaucracy itself. Foundations. First, we will journey back 10,000 years to the origins and purpose. We will uncover the Emperor's own design, a system of perfect logic and control, conceived during the Great Crusade. We will see how the vision of a unified galaxy required an administrative machine of unparalleled scope, and how the genius of Malcador the Sigillite laid the groundwork for what was to come. Departments. Then we will dissect the structure of the beast. We will break down the major departments, the logistical juggernaut of the Munitorum, the silent blades of the Assassinorum, the arcane analysts of the Logis Strategos. We will see how this is not a single organization, but a tangled ecosystem of fiefdoms, each with its own Byzantine rules and terrifying power. To make sense of this scale, we will then follow a day in the life of a single piece of data, a desperate request for Imperial Guard reinforcements. We will trace its path from the astropathic choir to the scribe's desk, through the dead ends and bureaucratic traps, witnessing firsthand how a cry for help can be lost for centuries in the machine. Consequences. This leads us to the inevitable consequences. We will explore how the Administratum's legendary failures are not mere anecdotes. They are the catalyst for some of the most iconic stories in the 41st millennium. We will see how a misplaced decimal point can doom a world, and how a forgotten file can unleash a sector-wide war. And in our conclusion and the big picture, we will step back from the parchment and the quills to ask the ultimate question. What does the Adeptus Administratum mean? What does this soul-crushing, galaxy-spanning monument to procedure tell us about the very nature of the Imperium itself? The answer is more terrifying and more tragic than you can imagine. This is our route. Stow your personal data slates and prepare your mind. We are now descending into the engine room of the Imperium. On a vast, star-filled galaxy. We zoom towards Terra, not as a planet of light, but as a world sheathed in the iron and stone of a single planet-spanning city. The scale is incomprehensible. To comprehend the Adeptus Administratum, we must first define the beast. It is not merely a government agency. It is one of the foundational pillars of the Adeptus Terra, the very government of the Imperium of Man. It is the central nervous system of a body that spans the galaxy, a system without which the brain, the Senatorum Imperialis, would be blind, deaf, and utterly paralyzed. If the Imperium is an organism, then the Administratum is not just its memory or its voice. It is the very circulation of its blood, the firing of its synapses, the recording of its every heartbeat and failing organ. Into the hive of Terra. We see endless, towering structures, but these are not residential habs. They're archives. Stack upon stack of vaults, scriptoriums, and data fortresses. And the scale of this system is the first thing that shatters the mind. The Administratum is, by any metric, the single largest organization in the entire Imperium. It is a population unto itself, 1 trillion souls or more, all dedicated to a single purpose, the act of record-keeping. It occupies entire continents on Holy Terra itself. The Himalaysian mountain range is not just its headquarters. It is its heart, its core, a geological feature consumed by bureaucracy. Imagine every clerk, every accountant, every filing clerk you have ever seen in your life. Now multiply that number by 1 billion, and you have not even begun to scratch the surface of the workforce dedicated solely to the Departamento Munitorum, which itself is but one branch of this Leviathan. We see the Emperor, a golden giant, overseeing the construction of great halls. Malcador, a hooded figure, stands beside him, organizing the first scrolls of the new order. But it was not always this monstrous. To understand its present, we must journey to its past, to the origin story. In the fiery crucible of the Unification Wars, the Emperor of Mankind faced a problem of unprecedented scope. He had conquered Terra, but to conquer the galaxy he needed more than armies and warships. He needed control. He needed to know what he owned, what he needed, and where to send it. His vision during the Great Crusade was for a system of perfect, centralized logic, a way to bring the light of reason and order to 1,000,000 worlds. The Astronomicon is the lighthouse beacon of the Imperium. Consider the fundamental technological constraint. The Imperium has no faster-than-light communication. None. The Astronomicon is a lighthouse, a psychic beacon that guides navigators through the warp. It does not send emails. It does not transmit resource allocations or battle reports. A call for help from the Eastern Fringe might take years, even decades, to reach Terra by astropath, and the message is often fragmented, dreamlike, and open to interpretation. The response, the shipment of men and material, would take decades more to arrive. How do you manage a galaxy under these conditions? You build a system that is relentless, methodical, and operates on a timescale of centuries, not days. You prioritize immovable procedure over flexible problem solving, because you can never have all the information at once. Let's focus on Malcador the Sigillite. We see him establishing the first great libraries, creating the initial departments, appointing the first logisters. He is the architect, laying down the blueprints for the labyrinth to come. And the emperor had the perfect architect for this impossible task, Malcador the Sigillite. If the emperor was the vision, Malcador was the master builder. He was the first true master of the Administratum, the one who imbued it with its initial structure and its sacred purpose. He understood that data was power. He created the first systems of tides, the first standardized logs, the first templates for planetary governance. He founded the orders of Logisters and Dialogus, who were to be the keepers of this knowledge. In those early days there was still flexibility. There was still a spark of intelligence, of understanding behind the recording. The system was a tool for a brighter future. The Horus heresy erupts in a firestorm of betrayal. We see the emperor mortally wounded, carried to the golden throne. The orderly halls of the early Administratum are shown cracking, gathering dust, and being buried under new emergency protocols stamped with the seal of the Inquisition. And then came the fall. The Horus heresy did not just shatter the Imperium's dream, it shattered the Administratum's soul. This is the aftermath of the heresy, the single most important event in its history. With the emperor interred upon the golden throne, the living, breathing guidance of the Imperium ceased. Malcador was dead. The primarchs were gone or scattered. In the resulting power vacuum, fear became the dominant currency. The Administratum, now leaderless and terrified, began to ossify. The flexible tool of the Great Crusade became a rigid, dogmatic shield against further change and further betrayal. Innovation was heresy. Interpretation was heresy. To question a form from the time of the heresy was to question the wisdom of the emperor himself. The system's original purpose, efficient governance, was replaced by a new, overriding imperative, survival through stasis. To make a mistake in this new dark age was not a procedural error, it was a spiritual failing. A misrecorded number could hide a genestealer cult. A misplaced decimal point in a munitions request could be the work of a chaos cultist. And so, the bureaucracy became a weapon against itself, its every action scrutinized for signs of heresy. The machine kept running, but its operators were now afraid to even lubricate the gears, for fear that the oil was impure. A scribe meticulously copying a damaged parchment, including the blot and tear, for fear of altering the sacred text. A high-level administrator signing an order for 1,000,000 lost guns to be sent to a world that no longer exists, simply because the form is correct. The system is shown as a colossal, rusted engine, still turning but screeching and throwing off sparks. This is the foundational truth of the Adeptus Administratum. It was born in an age of reason, designed by a demigod to manage a galaxy. But it was forged in an age of betrayal, and the trauma of that forging left it broken, paranoid, and utterly rigid. It is a system that values the correctness of the process infinitely more than the effectiveness of the outcome. It is a monument built to remember, but one that has forgotten how to think. And with this understanding of its birth and its sickness, we are now ready to dissect the living body of the beast, and examine its organs, one by one. Let's imagine the hellish, industrial landscape of Armageddon. The sky is fire and smoke. We see a bunker, an Imperial command post, shaking from artillery impacts. A grim-faced general, face smeared with soot and blood, dictates a message to a junior commissar. It is the aftermath of the Third War. The orc hordes of Gazkul Thraka have been broken, but not destroyed. The planet is a smoldering ruin, its cities shattered, its armies bleeding out. In a reinforced command bunker, General Kaito of the Armageddon Steel Legion knows his forces cannot hold against the inevitable greenskin counterattack. His only hope, reinforcements. Now, let's scene shifts to a dimly lit chamber. A withered, blind astropath chained to a podium receives the written message. He begins to chant, his mind projecting into the warp. The visuals become a terrifying, abstract journey through the immaterium, a screaming tapestry of colors and half-formed demonic faces, through which the astropath's signal, a tiny shimmering thread of pure information, desperately tries to navigate. The message is concise, desperate, Armageddon Secundus. Priority orient. Reinforcements required. 4 regiments minimum. Situation critical. This data is handed to the planet's astropathic choir. A chosen astropath, his soul bound to the Emperor, pours his consciousness into the warp. The message is not words, but a compressed packet of meaning, of urgency, of the scent of promethium and the taste of ash. It travels for years, a fleeting dream through a nightmare realm, battered by psychic static, almost torn apart by a passing demonic entity, before finally being caught, weak and fragmented, by a receiving choir on Terra. We are now in a cold, vast scriptorium on Terra. A young, pale scribe apprentice Fulton, listens, head cocked, to a senior scribe who reads out the Astropatha's interpreted message. Fulton's hand hovers over a fresh piece of vellum. He looks tired. The name, Armageddon, is spoken, but with the static of the warp and the choir's imperfect interpretation, it sounds unclear. The message is received, but it is no longer clean. The astropathic choir on Terra interprets the symbols. They feel the urgency, they see the world of fire and industry. But the name is muddled. The choir master dictates to a scribe apprentice, a young man on his third decade of service, who has never seen a tree, let alone a war zone. The word is Armageddon. But to the tired ears of the scribe, amidst the echoing whispers of the chamber, it sounds like Armageddon. A single, phonetically plausible error. A minor slip of the ear, a moment of human fallibility. A close-up on Fulton's quill as he carefully, reverently inks the heading, Planet, Armageddon / subsector, unknown / request, military reinforcement. He sprinkles it with sacred sand to dry the ink. The mistake is now permanent, sanctified. And with that, Fulton commits his heresy. Not of malice, but of simple error. He transcribes the name not as it is, but as he thinks he hears it. Armageddon. The form is perfect in every other way. The correct seals are applied, the correct prayers are chanted over the parchment. But the planet's identity is now, officially and irrevocably, wrong. This single piece of parchment, this cry for help from a billion souls, is now an orphan. It has no home. The document is collected by a servo skull. We follow it as it flies through endless archives. We see a colossal wall of millions of identical document slots. The servo skull, operating on a simple filing protocol, scans the header, Armageddon. Finding no pre-existing active file for a world of that name, it classifies it as a Tier 3 anomalous request, and deposits it into a specific dark shelf, the repository for unidentifiable planets, misplaced tides and bureaucratic ghosts. The slot is labeled Sector, Ultima / status, pending identification. The automated filing system, a triumph of dogmatic logic, now takes over. It searches its sacred registers for a planet named Armageddon. It finds none. The system does not assume an error. The system is infallible. The scribe's hand is the will of the emperor. Therefore, the planet must be new or its records lost. The request is filed not in the urgent, active war zone queue, but in the cavernous, dusty archives reserved for planetary identification and reclamation. Here it is buried. Not out of malice, but out of perfect, logical, bureaucratic procedure. The system has not failed. It has functioned exactly as designed. Dust settles on the shelf. The parchment yellows. On Armageddon, we see swift, the war ends, memorials are built, new industries rise from the ash, a generation is born and dies, all while the request sits in silence. 2 centuries pass. On Armageddon, the war becomes history, then legend. The general who sent the request is long dead, his bones ground to dust. The orcs have been pacified, though never fully eradicated. The planet struggles on, having saved itself through its own blood and sacrifice, forever scarred but independent. It has long since given up on Terra. Back in the archive, a young, idealistic novice, scribe probator Crix, is conducting a millennial audit, a sacred duty to reconcile the unresolved. His gloved hand pulls the Armageddon file from the dust. He frowns, cross-referencing it with a massive stellar cartography tome. He finds the match, Armageddon. His eyes widen in dawning horror. Meanwhile, in the depths of the Administratum, a diligent novice, scribe probator Crix, is performing a ritual data audit. His task is to clear the shelf of anomalies. He finds the Armageddon file. Something nags at him. He spends 6 months gaining permission to access the primary galactic logs. And there it is, Armageddon. A major industrial world, site of a famously grueling war. A war that concluded 187 years ago. He has just discovered a 2-century-old cry for help. The document, now stamped with error recovered / action. Expedite, flies through the system with shocking speed. It reaches the Munitorum. A bored logistician, seeing it as a valid request for 4 regiments for Armageddon, checks the current status of the planet. It is listed as peacekeeping status. He approves the order. We see a single lonely Imperial Guard transport ship, the Penitent Quest, being loaded with confused soldiers and dispatched towards the Armageddon system. With the error corrected, the bureaucracy now swings into action with terrifying, mindless efficiency. The request is valid. The form is now correct. The Munitorum authorizes the dispatch of the 1st Valhallan 501st Icebloods Regiment. The Departamento Logistica allocates a transport ship. The order, 200 years too late, is carried out with flawless precision. A ship filled with eager soldiers, born centuries after the war they are being sent to fight, sets sail for Armageddon. The Penitent Quest arrives in the Armageddon system. The planet below is heavily fortified, bustling with industry and at peace. The ship is met by a confused but wary patrol fleet. The final shot is of the Guard regiments disembarking onto a landing pad, being greeted not as saviors, but as a bizarre, unwelcome historical curiosity. When the reinforcements finally arrive, they are not met as saviors. They are a bureaucratic artifact, a ghost from a past no one remembers. They are an administrative problem for the current planetary governor to solve. They have no barracks, no supply line, no purpose. The Imperium has, with perfect tragic competence, solved a problem that ceased to exist 10 generations ago. Scribe Probator Crix, back on Terra, receiving a commendation for his diligence in resolving an ancient data anomaly. He is lauded as a hero of the Administratum. He has no idea of the pointless, costly chain of events he has just set in motion. This is the Administratum in action. Not a story of evil, but of a system so complex, so detached from reality, and so petrified of error that it creates catastrophes of irrelevance. It is a machine that can lose a world in the morning, and spend the afternoon diligently finding it again, long after everyone involved has turned to dust. This is not an exception. It is the rule. And it is happening somewhere on a million different pieces of parchment right now. We see the Imperium not as a collection of worlds, but as a single colossal machine, its gears grinding against each other, throwing off sparks. So, we have seen it. In its full, terrifying scale. The Adeptus Administratum is not merely an organization. It is a state of being. It is a system born from the absolute necessity of ruling a galaxy without the tools to do so, forged in the visionary fire of the Emperor, then shattered and reforged in the bitter betrayal of the heresy. Its soul, once a tool of logic, is now frozen in the permafrost of dogma. It is a monument to the principle that in the face of infinite complexity and infinite danger, the only safe path is to never ever change. We have wandered its departments, a labyrinth with no center. We have handled its tools, relics of a fear so deep it rejects its own potential. And we have witnessed the human cost, the trillions of souls who are not citizens but components, their lives a form of fuel burned to keep the lights on in a cathedral of paperwork. Its inefficiency is not a flaw. It is the feature. It is the shock absorber that allows a rigid, fragile empire to withstand the blows of a hostile universe without shattering. It is the ultimate expression of the Imperium's core tragic truth. That scale has triumphed over efficiency, that tradition has strangled progress, and that the sheer, unmovable weight of the past is the only thing preventing the entire edifice from collapsing under the weight of the present. The tendrils of the Administratum touch everything. If you want to see how this bureaucratic nightmare interacts with the Imperium's other great power, the secret police who hunt corruption from within, then your next logical step is to watch my deep dive into the Ordo Hereticus, the arm of the Inquisition that knows just how deeply a clerical error can hide a demonic plot. And now I turn to you. The lore of 40K is built on these absurd, tragic tales. I want to know, what is the most absurd, mind-bending, or hilariously grimdark piece of 40K bureaucracy you have ever come across? Was it a planet declared excommunicate traitores because it failed to file its tax return? A Space Marine chapter nearly declared renegade over a misspelled name? Share your favorite stories in the comments below. Let's build our own archive of imperial inefficiency. A scribe's hand finishing a signature. A single piece of parchment being stamped with a final, thunderous seal. As we pulls back with shocking speed, reveals it is one of billions in a vault that stretches into infinity. The Administratum is the greatest story the Imperium never tells. It is a reminder that in the 41st millennium, there is no peace amongst the stars, no mercy in the corridors of power, and no room for error. An army can be defeated and rebuilt. A hero can fall and be replaced. But a misplaced form, a single flawed datum, can echo through the centuries, dooming worlds yet unborn. It is the true enemy within, the weight of history itself. In the Imperium of Man, a misplaced form is more dangerous than a heretic's blade. It is the quiet, bureaucratic sigh that drowns out the screams of billions. Thank you for watching. The Emperor protects.